Welcome into today's edition of Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Delighted that you've tuned in. Join with me today on Strategies for Living. Well, we're all about helping us live healthier, happier, more peaceful lives in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits, in our relationships here in the 21st century. And we do that by engaging in important conversations with folks we like to call life strategists each and every time we do Strategies for Living. Today's life strategist is a welcome life strategist returning to Strategies for Living, David Ingerson, the author of The Caleb Years. What do you do when God doesn't make sense, David? And in the Caleb years with you and your beautiful wife, Kathy, God didn't make a lot of sense, did he?
You know, David, there were times when he didn't.
Yeah.
I had a lady at one of our book events who took exception with that subtitle. She came up to us and said, "No, God always makes sense." And I said to her, "Ma'am, I agree." To
But
himself.
not with our human mind.
That's
not with
right,
our
but to
egoic
us.
human
Right.
mind. Because here was this beautiful baby, Caleb. And I want you to introduce us to Caleb. You and Kathy had other children. You were excited to welcome Caleb into your family. And then things got dicey. But there's this beautiful, innocent baby, Caleb, and he's absolutely beautiful, and yet there's some problems, right? What's going on with Caleb?
Well, you know, David, he was our fourth child.
Right.
The first three, they were normal, healthy. Their deliveries were reasonably normal
Right.
and uneventful. But this fourth child, though he was 5 days overdue, and though there was nothing diagnosed intrautero, we didn't particularly have any medical checks in advance, no ultrasound particularly. We did have one incidentally on the Japanese economy just to determine the gender of
Right.
the boy, which we knew.
Right?
When he was born, David, 5 days overdue, I explained this to your listeners previously, but something told me right after he was born that I needed to perform a very unusual, odd inspection. Literally, David, after having carried him from the delivery bed to the heat lamp where the med tech performed her initial assessments, I had to roll him over and spread his little cheeks and then make an inspection. The doctor noticed this odd inspection. He said to me, "David, what are you doing?" I said, "Doctor, this is curious. The garage door is closed."
Now, see, David, to me, when I first heard you, when we talked about this when you were our guest before, I asked you if that was a God thing, because, and I think I asked you, I think I remember asking you, you'd had 3 other births.
You bet.
And I asked you, are you in the habit of doing that? You know, checking your children there? Because most parents, most fathers, most mothers don't do that. And yet, you got this, I mean, I don't know what the odds are. I'm not a statistician. We're on a college campus. Maybe we'll find a statistician. But I would imagine the odds of you having the push to do that, the internal push to do that, against the fact that there was a problem, there's got to be a couple of million to 1. I don't know.
You know, David,
So that's got to be a God thing right there, David.
I do not disagree. In fact, I do agree. It was definitely a God thing. In the epilogue, the end of the book, my beloved bride of nearly 30 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. She wrote the epilogue to this book. She lived it with me. She read it, and then she said to me, "I'm a part of this story, and I want to write the epilogue." So I welcomed her to do that.
Absolutely.
In those words, she shares that she actually reached the point of being thankful for the imperforate anus that the child was born with.
The garage door was completely
Garage door
closed.
being closed. And you know, David, what's interesting is that he had a number of life-threatening congenital anomalies. As I said earlier, none of them were diagnosed intrautero. So when I observed this imperforate anus, I didn't even know the terminology at the time, being a pilot.
But you had to go there because he looked like a beautiful baby boy. Didn't
Normal.
he? Normal, beautiful
Normal.
baby boy.
Looked normal. It must have been the prompting of the Holy Spirit of God for me to roll him over and look, because if we hadn't noticed and had sent him home, quite likely he would have died of his heart disease before we knew to check his heart.
So the doctor's reaction when he saw you doing it, what are you doing, David? What are you doing back there?
The doctor, who was an ENT, ear, nose, and throat specialist, just happened to be walking by because
He was walking down the aisle, as I recall, and
You bet.
hey, she's ready, and get in here. We just need a doc.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Fast delivery. He came
Yeah.
in having his jokes. I was doing the jokes and laughing along with him. Suddenly, no more joking. He barked, "Go get the certain doctor, Dr. Hall, who was a neonatologist." And when that gentleman saw the imperfect anus, he immediately knew, based on his experience and his training, that we needed to check his heart
Right.
for heart defect, which of course was the most major of his defects, the life-threatening, very serious heart defect known as hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Hence, my wife, as we affectionately refer to as the tall blonde, in the epilogue writing that she reached a point of being thankful that he was afflicted with that imperfect anus that resulted in immediately going and checking his heart
Right.
so they could begin immediate intervention, because without it, he would not have lived beyond 2 to 3 days.
Wow. And this beautiful young man did live for several years. In fact, beating the odds, right?
He
And
lived-
that's the Caleb years.
He lived to 3.5, and the thing about the fact that he died at age 3.5 is that he was infected with HIV due to a contaminated unit of blood at the age of 16 months after his third open heart of 5 open heart surgery.
Wow. What a little champ.
With the advent of the antiretroviral medication, we believe that though he wasn't prone to a ventricular fibrillation, the electronic stoppage of the heart more or less,
Right.
we believe it came as a result of an adverse reaction as a side effect from the anti-HIV medications. We were banking on and believing he would live to adulthood, and that either there would be miraculous healing or there would be the possibility of a heart transplant or some other new level of medical technological development that could save his life. He didn't have the opportunity. And David, this is the point where the Caleb years and the importance of them comes in. I was laboring as much as I could as a pilot and a professional military officer to do everything I could to extend the child's life, to get the best medical care and promote that care.
You were an Air Force pilot.
Yes, Air Force pilot flying at the Presidential Airlift Wing at Andrews Air Force Base, the 89th Airlift Wing at that time.
Thank you for your service,
Thanks
by
for
the way.
saying
You're
that,
now retired. You
Yes,
are now
indeed.
a retired Air Force pilot, but thank you for your
You bet.
service to our country. So you had access, through your military connections and through the insurance coverage. You had some wonderful
We had-
medical help available to you and to Caleb,
David, it was very
to your
humbling.
family and to Caleb.
Very humbling, because upon his very birth, there was an urgent medevac flight generated from mainland Japan that came and picked us up and transported him to the U.S. mainland within 12 hours of birth. And the privilege of that military system is just incalculable. And then to be able to take him, referred to the best doctors available in the greatest country with the greatest medical system, was a great privilege and a humbling honor. The thing I was describing about the disappointment part is that when he did die early, much sooner than expected, the great disappointment that I dealt with and faced is something I've come to recognize we're not alone in. Everyone experiences difficulty and disappointment in life, and what do we do when we face these deep disappointments? I dealt with a lot of anger. I felt as though my son had been affronted because the HIV, the donor of the HIV positive blood.
So many things. Yeah.
Well, he knew of his at-risk behavior, which he withheld from the blood collection site. And there was a great temptation, and more than that, for me to really express some anger toward him. I made a conscious decision in that disappointment to not let it crush me, to not let it define me, but to turn to this God that I knew had the power and the ability to stop it and allow the child to live, but didn't, and deal with him. And have the courage and faith to say, oh God, I don't understand this, but I still trust in you.
We've got a lot to talk about, obviously, today with David Ingersom, our life strategist. The book is The Caleb Years. It's available on the shelves at Barnes & Noble in Shreveport. You can get it at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Lifeway Books can order it. We will be back with David Ingerson, the author of The Caleb Years today. We'll talk about how David dealt with all of that he's mentioning now, the anger, the disappointment, when God doesn't make sense to us. Today, David Ingerson on Strategies for Living. We'll be right back.
Whether you're enjoying an ATV, all-terrain vehicle, or an ROV, recreational off-highway vehicle, safety can be as simple as ABC. A. Always wear a proper helmet, eye protection, gloves, long sleeves and pants, sturdy boots, and in an ROV, the seatbelt. B. Ride sober and only on designated trails. C. Get safety trained through the ATV Safety Institute, atvsafety.org, or the Recreational Off-Highway Vehicle Association, rohva.org.
I think reading is exciting to me.
I think reading's fun. Reading is great and wonderful. Reading is so much fun. It brings out my imagination and it helps me learn.
It helps you with everything you need help with. Reading helps me become a better reader.
It helps me have knowledge and, I can learn stuff from it.
It helps me learn new things.
It helps me be a writer.
It makes you learn the words more often, and it gets you reading better. And so one day when you grow up, then you'll be a better reader than before.
Well, it helps you understand things in life about stuff that you may not know that's going on in our world.
Some of my friends need help reading.
We need reading volunteers because some kids have trouble reading and they need some help. They may need help because they don't get as much attention as most kids at home to practice.
A lot of third graders don't know how to read, so we need volunteers to help them.
They need help with reading.
Adults can help kids if the kids need help sounding out words. Volunteers can help them say the words and, help them read.
Please become a reading volunteer to help my friends.
Please step forward.
Please step forward.
Please step forward.
Welcome back into Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. You're watching Strategies for Living. Don't forget, you can listen to Strategies for Living. We're at News Radio 710 Keel, where it all began 23 plus years ago. Sunday mornings between 9:05 and 10, Strategies for Living. You can also hear us Thursdays on healthylife.net, and you can find us at www.strategiesforliving.com. Today, David Ingerson is our life strategist here and the author of The Caleb Years. What a fantastic book this is. And by the way, congratulations, because you were honorable mention you were first of all a finalist, and you got honorable mention in the IndieFab.
Yes, Forward Review out of
Yes.
Traverse City, Michigan.
Fantastic. Congratulations,
Thank you,
David.
David.
First book. And by
Yes,
the way,
indeed.
you're working on a second one, I
Yes, we
understand.
are.
We'll
You
talk
bet.
a little bit about that. I also want to mention you and Kathy own Superior Dry Cleaning
Yes,
here
we
in
have
Shreveport.
partners, so we're a partner in the ownership of Superior Dry Cleaning.
Okay, and you got 3 locations around
We
the
do.
Shreveport area?
Yes, Southern Loop, the Windrush Village, 12 Oaks, the entrance to 12 Oaks subdivision, just off Floney Lucas, and our newest location opened in December, North Market, about a mile south of where I-49 currently intersects with North Market.
Fantastic. All right, so you and Kathy and your family have been blessed, but it didn't always feel that way, did it, during the Caleb years? What do you want? How did you get through? Before break, you were talking about all of the anger, all of the things that you felt, and rightly so. Here's this innocent little boy who has all of these issues, and then on top of that, blood transfusion, gets HIV. My goodness, what else? A lot of us may have shook our fists and said, God, how much more? How did you get through? How did you and Kathy get through that, David?
We got through it by being honest and true to ourselves, to the emotions we felt, because I've learned when I'm dealing with something that is just, for me, inconceivably difficult, when the emotion is so dark, it's hard to face, I have to face it and admit it and, in a sense, live through it. And if I do, instead of pretending everything's all okay, then I'll be healthy one day. And so it's being honest with these difficult emotions. Because if we're not, I think we're like a pressure cooker. It builds up with the pressure inside us, and there might be a little, not so little explosion.
Right.
I believe we're able to avoid those types of serious meltdowns, so to speak, because we dealt with the difficult emotions. And I would also say the support and love and help of our friends, of our church, of our family, and yes, of our faith in God, because we knew that though we didn't understand why He allowed such suffering for this child and even to our entire family, we yet knew that we could trust Him because He is good. And we understood that He loves us, despite the fact that we sometimes don't understand what and why He's allowing in our lives.
Does it help this many years later, and there's a book that has touched many lives in a positive way? I'm wondering, do you ever wonder whether Caleb was an angel sent to, because Caleb's life has positively impacted you and Kathy, his siblings, but it's gone way, way beyond that with the writing and the publication of the Caleb years. I mean, do you think of Caleb as a little, I mean, he is an angel. He is a little angel, but do you think of him as in the spirit of an angel is a messenger?
You know, there is a famous king of Israel that I share the name from, David.
We both do.
Yes, indeed. When he died, or at least as recorded in the scripture in the book of Acts, it says when he had finished his work, his course, he fell asleep. He died. This child was 3.5. Most of us would say he wasn't done. His time hadn't come. It can't be. It's not right.
Right.
I don't need to say that, because something else that we understand is that unless this kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains a single kernel of wheat. But if it does die, it can produce a harvest of 50, 100, and more.
Right.
And this child's life, we believe, in many ways, he has done more good during his life and now in the years since his death than perhaps his parents, or his father at least, in his years of 52 on this earth.
I wasn't going to ask you, but I was going to guess over 50.
How about that?
A
Yes.
minute over 50.
A minute over 50, indeed.
Over 50. So I understand that you're working on another book.
Yes, indeed, David.
Little Birdie told me that. What's next, David? What's this next? Can you give us a little hint? So
I can tell you a little bit about it, even though the publishers tell me I shouldn't.
yeah.
It is going to address the deeper levels of disappointment, because right after the child's death, we were numb. And that numbness, frankly, I see as a blessing,
Absolutely.
as a way that we're protected by our divine, loving Maker, who allows us to not have to face the deep, enduring trauma and long-term chronic pain, so the numbness helps. Well, when the numbness wears off, then what? Are you yet going to be defined by your pain, or are you going to be defined by living a vibrant, productive, joyful life? And we chose to do that. So, how did we get to that point and transition through it? Book 2 is going to talk a bit about that. But it isn't, yes, a little bit, but it isn't particularly just for someone who's suffered the grief of a family member. It's for any deep disappointment in life, as I referenced earlier. Mm-hmm. Part of it, of course, being candid, honest with the emotions, and choosing not to be defined by them. And I think some of the stories that are, again, rather candid will be helpful and will help people feel a commonality. Yes, I have dealt with a difficult disappointment in life. How have I risen above it and decided to live a vibrant, successful life?
Most of us can't even imagine going through something as traumatic as the death of a child, but we might be able to imagine going through something like the loss of a job.
You bet.
Or
Bankruptcy? You bet.
Or the devastation
Divorce?
of divorce.
Absolutely.
Or separation.
Yes.
Those things we can imagine, heartbreak and that
You
type
bet.
of thing. So I can't wait for that new book to come out and for you to come back. What did the siblings? What did Caleb's siblings? How did the whole family respond as a unit to
There are
the Caleb years?
There are some really entertaining and compelling stories that are fresh when the child died, and the 4-year-old, the 6-year-old, and how they dealt with it.
Yeah.
With aplomb. The child who was 6 was playing with his body at the funeral home, thinking it was fun.
Yeah.
Hey, look, his hands snap back when you pick them up and drop them. One of my aunts was a bit unsettled by that, but she got over it.
Yeah.
These children, David, today, they're healthy. And they're healthy, I think, because we didn't honor this child after his death and talk about him as though he was a perfect child. We talked about him as though he was who he was.
Right.
We admitted that sometimes it was a bit irritating to hear him saying, "I'm tired, my eyes hurt," or what have you. We talk about him
He was a normal little
like
boy.
any other child in
Yeah.
the family. And the other thing is that we have also not hidden him away in his memory. Some people may keep the bedroom of the deceased child as a shrine. We did not do that. Some people may immediately remove all pictures, any reference to the deceased family member. We did not do that. And we don't recommend it. We recommend just be normal, be honest, whatever works for you, but don't try and force it. A woman walked through our house who was a good friend during the years the child lived. And she saw pictures in the hallway, the normal family gallery. And she said to my wife, "Oh, Kathy, doesn't it bother you to have all these pictures of Caleb in the house?" And my wife said, "Well, Kay, there aren't any more pictures of him than anyone else. Actually, there are fewer because we can't take any more.
Right.
We just want to just go on with life, not pretending he didn't die, not pretending he was a perfect human. He was not. He was a normal child.
So the message is to embrace life.
Embrace life.
Embrace
yes.
life, whatever life brings, and sometimes, maybe oftentimes, that's going to be what we would call deep disappointment.
Disappointment.
The other message that I've got, and that I'm taking out of the Caleb years, David, is, but you never know, because look what the Caleb years produced. Look how many lives Caleb has touched now and continues to touch. 3.5 years on the planet, and he continues to influence many, 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 many lives through your wonderful writing here in the Caleb years.
David, if I may, there's one reference in the New Testament scriptures that for me is so important and relevant.
Absolutely.
And it says, "We rejoice in the hope of the glory of God because of our standing with him, those in faith." It immediately goes on and says, "But we also rejoice in our sufferings because we know sufferings produce perseverance, and perseverance, character or proven character, and character, hope. And our hope does not disappoint us because of God's love poured out into our heart." And so what we have come to understand, and what I am continuing to consider and meditate and learn, is that difficulty in our lives may help us and may shape us and build our character so that we can handle storms of life far better than the years of success or the days of success.
Absolutely.
Just like a friend who might correct me for something he observes that I have done or said that wasn't appropriate has helped me more than the one who just pats me on the back and says, "You're just wonderful and perfect." I want friends who are going to love me enough to tell me the truth.
Absolutely. That's, David, do this, or you might want to think about this, or
You
look
bet.
at this. That's a real friend.
You bet.
There's just a tremendous amount in the Caleb years to learn. And I know that you guys are still learning.
We are
as,
indeed.
Your family continues to evolve. How old are your kids now?
The eldest is 25.
Wow.
She married August 1st this past year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. They're very happy. We're very proud of her. The next one is 23. He's a young lieutenant stationed at Spangdahlem Air Base in Germany, serving as a contracting officer, doing well there. Proud of that young man. Our third daughter, she's in Shreveport, works for a local accountant, and she graduated from LSUS this past May with a bachelor's degree. So they're all doing very well.
Fantastic. Okay.
And the youngest, I must say, if I may, is 14. She's a great joy, and she's obviously still in the house. She's the one who was born a little over a year after her brother died.
Yeah.
And she has been just a great joy to the entire family. Her name is Deborah.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations to
Thank
you
you,
and Kathy
David.
on your wonderful family and on this wonderful book. You and Kathy both deserve a lot of credit for sharing your lives with us. The Caleb Years, When God Doesn't Make Sense. David Ingersom, and you can find him on the shelf at Barnes & Noble in Shreveport. You can also order The Caleb Years from Amazon.com, from BarnesandNoble.com, and Lifeway Books in Shreveport can special order it. David Ingersom, thank you so much for coming and being our life strategist here on Strategies for Living. Folks, thank you for coming, tuning in to Strategies for Living. Don't forget, you can tune in to News Radio 710 Keel Sunday mornings, 9:05 to 10 for the radio version of Strategies for Living, and on Thursdays at healthylife.net. And for David Ingersom, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. See you next time here on Strategies for Living.